New York television had a problem: Robin Byrd. She had no network behind her, no expensive studio, no corporate approval. Instead, she took a small cable access program and turned it into something that would survive for more than 2 decades. By the time the show ended in 1998, The Robin Byrd Show had become one of New York's most notorious late-night cult programs. But here's what makes her story remarkable. Robin Byrd didn't just build a television career. She became a cable pioneer, an AIDS-era advocate, and eventually part of a First Amendment battle over who had the right to control what viewers could watch. And the woman who once seemed impossible for mainstream television to take seriously may have understood the future of television better than the networks did. Robin Byrd was born in New York City in 1955 and raised by adoptive parents. She studied marketing and advertising at Baruch College, but left during her senior year. Then she went to the School of Visual Arts. That move mattered, because before Robin Byrd became a television personality, she was already moving through New York's artistic underground. She worked as a model for art classes. She performed, and eventually she entered the world of adult film. But that wasn't where her most important career would happen. It would happen somewhere much smaller. A cable channel, a camera, and an audience that mainstream television had almost completely ignored. In the late 70s, Byrd became involved with a leased-access cable program called Hot Legs. Then she began hosting it, and in 1977 the program became The Robin Byrd Show. There was nothing about it that looked like traditional network television. The production was low budget. The atmosphere was unpredictable, and Byrd developed a visual identity viewers could recognize instantly, including her trademark black crocheted bikini and white nail polish. But the real innovation wasn't the costume. It was the format. Robin Byrd wasn't trying to make television look respectable. She was making it feel accessible. The show welcomed performers and personalities from New York's underground culture, and Byrd spoke to them in a way that mainstream television rarely did. That created something networks couldn't manufacture, a sense that the viewer was actually inside the room. And once that connection formed, the show became bigger than its budget. Byrd's film career helped make her recognizable, including her appearance in the 1978 film Debbie Does Dallas. But television was where she found something different. A recurring audience, a recognizable persona, and eventually, a cultural platform. The Robin Byrd Show ran from 1977 to 1998, giving it a lifespan that crossed multiple eras of television. The 1980s became the 1990s. Cable television changed, New York changed, but Robin Byrd kept going, and therefore the show became something larger than a late-night curiosity. It became an archive of a city and a culture that traditional television often left outside the frame. That became especially important during the AIDS crisis. The easiest way to remember Robin Byrd is as a provocative television personality. But that description leaves out the most important transformation. During the AIDS crisis, Byrd used her platform to promote safer sex and awareness. She wasn't operating from a university lecture hall. She was speaking through late-night cable television. Her audience already knew her. They trusted her voice. And that gave her something many formal institutions struggled to achieve: attention. The show became a place where sexuality, health, identity, and community could be discussed openly at a time when fear and misinformation were everywhere. That changed the meaning of Robin Byrd's career. She was no longer simply someone appearing on television. She was using television to reach people who might not listen to anyone else. And then the establishment finally noticed. But this is where Robin Byrd's story takes a completely different turn. Because the greatest threat to her show wasn't declining ratings. It wasn't changing fashion. It wasn't even the rise of new television. It was the company controlling the cable system. And suddenly, Robin Byrd wasn't fighting for attention. She was fighting for access. But there is another side to Robin Byrd that changes the way you see the entire story. Behind the outrageous television personality was a private life that remained largely hidden from her audience. Byrd had been with her husband Shelley since 1974. He wasn't simply the person waiting for her after the cameras stopped. He was part of the machinery behind the show. He helped with production, he answered phones, he kept things moving, he became the person behind the personality. And while millions of viewers knew Robin Byrd as a larger-than-life television figure, they knew almost nothing about the relationship supporting her behind the scenes. That contrast is important because the Robin Byrd people saw on television was deliberately larger than life. The Robin Byrd at home was simply a person building a life with someone she loved. The original Robin Byrd Show ended in 1998, but the story didn't disappear. According to the 2026 documentary Bang My Box, The Robin Byrd Story, Byrd's surviving archive contains roughly 600 episodes and recordings from the show. Think about what that means. Those tapes are not simply old television programs. They are pieces of New York history. They preserve performers, conversations, styles, attitudes, and a version of cable television that existed before the internet completely transformed how audiences and creators connected. Today, anyone can start a channel. Anyone can build an audience. Anyone can speak directly to millions of people. Robin Byrd was doing a primitive version of that decades earlier. She didn't have YouTube. She had cable access. She didn't have algorithms. She had viewers calling the studio. She didn't have social media. She had a late-night audience that knew exactly where to find her. The technology was different. The idea wasn't. Robin Byrd's greatest achievement wasn't appearing in a controversial film. It wasn't the costume, it wasn't the celebrity, and it wasn't even the controversy. It was ownership of her own voice. She entered an industry that had powerful gatekeepers. Then she found a loophole. Cable television gave her a small door. She walked through it, and instead of asking the establishment for permission, she built her own audience. That audience lasted more than 20 years. Her platform became part entertainment, part cultural archive, and during the AIDS crisis, part public education. Then, when corporate television tried to place new barriers between her programming and its audience, she fought back in court. That is why Robin Byrd deserves to be remembered differently. Not simply as a provocative television personality, not simply as a retro cinema figure, but as one of the people who helped prove that television could belong to outsiders too. And perhaps that's why her story feels surprisingly modern. Before influencers, before podcasts, before live streams, before YouTube, there was Robin Byrd sitting in front of a camera in New York, talking to an audience that traditional television didn't know how to reach. She didn't wait for the future of television to arrive. In her own strange, low-budget, unforgettable way, she started building it. And that may be the real legacy of Robin Byrd. Not the controversy, not the costume, not even the cult status. The legacy is the voice, a voice that refused to disappear. And if you want more stories about the forgotten personalities who changed retro cinema and television long before anyone realized their importance, subscribe to Retro Cinema History and Icon Biographies. Because the history of entertainment isn't only written by the people who became household names. Sometimes it's written by the outsiders who refuse to leave the screen.